Greetings, citizens of the internet! You can call me Nitro Indigo, and today I'll be riffing on Recognition, the 17th episode of Power Rangers SPD. Power Rangers was a big part of my childhood, but it became a collection of vague memories in the back of my mind until I went on a trip down memory lane in early 2018. As for SPD, I think I only saw an advert for it as a kid. It was the first time I heard the word Delta, and the numbers on the suits ring a bell, but I remember literally nothing else about it. The premise of Power Rangers SPD is that in the year 2025, aliens are living alongside humans on Earth, because that's totally not going to come back to bite continuity once the actual 2025 comes around at all. To deal with the 1% of these aliens who are criminals, a police organisation called Space Patrol Delta, SPD for short, was set up. When a glorified SWAT team called the A Squad goes missing in action, it's up to our heroes, the B Squad, to become the new defenders of Earth. With no nostalgia to cloud my judgment, I can confidently say that SPD is actually pretty good. Despite being rough around the edges, with some stupid censorship and rushed plot points, it has an interesting setting and well-developed protagonists. I also like the comic book styled editing. While I think other seasons are objectively better, SPD is definitely my favourite. The thrilling backstory behind why I'm reviewing this episode specifically is because after not watching Power Rangers for a while, I was bored one evening, felt like watching an episode of a TV show with a certain type of plot, and I remembered reading about this. Watching this episode, and working on this riff review, got me really obsessed with Power Rangers again. Without further ado, let's begin! This episode starts with an adorable little robo-dog named Rick trying to play fetch with Sky, the Blue Ranger. Sky doesn't want to play fetch, and then Jack, the Red Ranger, comes in and tries to play it instead, but Rick will only return the ball to Sky.
All work and no play makes Sky a dull boy.
Did they just reference The Shining in this kids show? Suddenly, alarm! The Rangers teleport to the command room, morph and jump into their Zords. For some reason, the sequence of the Delta Runners leaving the base reminds me of Thunderbirds. Meanwhile, Cat and Doggy deliver some exposition about the monster of the week, a ridiculous looking dude named Wutox. Seriously, what is up with those light bulbs and elf shoes? Instead of growing bigger like in most Power Rangers seasons, most of the monsters of the week in SPD have giant robots. After a rather underwhelming Megazord battle, Wutox gets away. I always found the Megazord battles at the end the most boring part, so I like how SPD sometimes shakes up the formula.
We should have got him!
Those arm movements get me every time. Anyway, Jack calls for help, so Doggy Kruger morphs into the Shadow Ranger and activates the Delta Command Megazord, which is sometimes called the Delta Base Megazord, temporarily gaining Jack's voice in the process.
SPD! What?
He shoots Wutox's giant robot with
Fire finger lasers!
which causes it to fall over and explode, because Power Rangers. Then he falls into some random empty plaza and flips a coin to decide if he should take the Delta Base Megazord or not. He lands yes. The coin tossing thing comes up once more in the episode, and then it's never mentioned again. Then the B Squad show up and roll call to pad out this episode's runtime, and we get a fight scene. Why are the police using swords in 2025? It ends with Sky handcuffing Wutox while the others hold him at gunpoint. Why don't they just turn him into a card like they usually do? Who even knows? Well, I know the real reason, but I'll save it for the conclusion. For those of you who haven't seen this show, in most episodes, they scan the monsters of the week with their morphers to see if they're innocent or guilty. If they're guilty, then they turn them into containment cards. In other words, their justice system is Pokemon. We cut to Delta Base headquarters, where Jack and Sky are dragging Wutox into a lift.
Commander Kruger wants the Sky for questioning? What could he possibly know that's worth anything?
Actually, what did Kruger need to question Wutox about? It's never explained. Sky reassures Jack that he can take Wutox to his cell on his own. We then cut to some expositional banter.
So it's SPD headquarters itself that becomes the Megazord. Interesting.
Because that doesn't sound like a health and safety nightmare at all. Sky opens the cell, but Wutox catches him off guard, allowing him to grab Sky and touch their foreheads together. What did this do? Well...
What? What's going on? What did you do to me? I switched our bodies.
What?
You didn't know I was so talented.
Did you?
I've got to wonder if this is how Wutox evaded capture for so long. Is that even his original body? Then there's a fight scene where Bluetox rips off his body's translation collar, which explodes, because this was apparently directed by Michael Bay. Also, how did it keep Sky's voice before that? The fight ends when Bluetox kicks Sky into the cell and closes it. Then he goes into another room, almost attacks the only guard in this entire building, and monologues to himself.
Now, let's find the Delta Base cockpit.
You can tell he's evil because he's staring into the camera at Dutch angles while ominous music plays. Then he barges into the girls' room, before we cut back to Skye trying to ask the guard for help, to no avail. Also, those bars look really flimsy. After a scene where the girls complain about Bluetox being a jerk, Skye easily escapes from his cell by slipping his giant Edward Scissorhands through the bars and pressing a button, because this interplanetary government organisation has barely any security. We then cut to Doggy Kruger delivering some exposition to the B Squad.
Bluetox is responsible for the destruction of more than 50 planets.
Remember kids, 1 million is a statistic.
We cannot trust any information we get from it.
Now that part about questioning makes even less sense.
Skye?
Sorry.
Permission to judge and confine has been granted.
You see, it's funny because dramatic irony. Also, since when did you need to give them permission to do that? After some more talking, an alarm goes off, alerting everyone that Bluetox has escaped. We cut to the B Squad in the corridor, where Bluetox decides to go in a different direction to everyone else to find the Delta Base cockpit. Meanwhile, the other four complain about how they can't find Bluetox, and Skye won't respond to Z's call. Suddenly, Skye magically finds Bluetox. They fight for a bit, at one point even getting close enough to, touch foreheads and reverse the switch, before the other four show up again and try to kill Skye.
Guys, it's me! I've got to make them understand.
Sure, attack them. That'll convince them that you're on their side.
It's me, Sid! It's Skye! Please!
Oh, for the love of guacamole and all things holy, you already know that they can't understand you, you metaphorical potato! Skye gets a strike in Ranger Bowling and then runs away. Jack begins to realise that something's up when Bluetox goes the other way again. Meanwhile, in the lab, Kat is doing something on a computer when Rick starts barking like crazy. Bluetox comes in and demands to know where the cockpit is. When Rick tries to attack him, Bluetox shoots him and attacks Kat, who presses a button to alert Doggy. After Bluetox kicks Kat to the ground, Doggy shows up and immediately figures out what happened.
Who are you? You're not Skye.
They have a conversation that implies that Doggy knows who Bluetox is, but not the other way around. Then they morph, which leads to a scene that proves that they can film original fights without resorting to explosions, but only when they're indoors. Then they teleport to a Japanese corridor with a really nice carpet, where Bluetox drops this bombshell.
Think before you go any further, Commander. Destroy me, and your cadet will be stuck in my body forever, you monster!
Meanwhile, at some random harbour, Skye is having an existential crisis.
What can I do? I'm a wanted criminal to be deleted on sight.
Skye figures out that Bluetox wants to take over the Delta Base Megazord and runs off to find the cockpit, which Bluetox has already teleported into. How did he find it? Meanwhile, Bridge reassures the others that Bluetox is still inside, only to turn around to see Skye running towards them. They morph and shoot at him, but he completely shrugs it off. By the way, Bridge is psychic. Shouldn't he have already figured it out?
The door!
You don't say.
Oh no, the base is transformed!
You don't say.
It's turning into the Megazord!
You don't say! A consistent problem with this show is that the dialogue is significantly worse written in morphed scenes. Bluetox monologues about how he wants to destroy this planet, one city at a time, while the other four continue to point out the obvious.
Oh no! The transformation's complete!
This is bad! He's fully armed and dangerous!
The entire city will be destroyed!
There's gotta be something we can do to stop it!
Look!
Bluetox monologues some more, and then Skye shows up to save the day. Wait, how did Skye get there so quickly? And how did no one notice him? I think this would have been a great opportunity for the others to walk in and see the supposed villain stopping the supposed hero from doing something evil, but Toei didn't get that idea first. Then they jump out of the Megazord, which is something that happens quite a lot in this show, and we get another fight scene.
You can't win, Ranger! Destroy me and you'll lose your body forever! Can you live with that? I don't care! As long as you're no longer free to cause trouble!
After Skye whacks Bluetox out of morph, the others show up and shoot Skye. They hold him at gunpoint again, before Doggy Kruger shows up to save the day.
They've changed bodies.
What? We changed bodies, but we've changed back. I'm Skye. It's a lie!
That's a lie! That can't be! You're lying to me!
Guys? Hold up your judgment scanners, ask Bluetox if he's guilty of body swapping, and watch as it comes up with X. No? Okay then. Instead, Jack gets the idea to play fetch with Rick. He runs towards Bluetox, before turning around and giving the ball to Skye. Kruger and Jack then restrain Bluetox, allowing Skye to switch them back. they have yet another fight, this time with the awesome instrumental version of the theme song, which ends with them blasting Wootox with the canine cannon. Don't worry, he didn't die, he turned into a card. By the way, I like how Rick was in the scene before this. In most episodes where they use the cannon, he just teleports to them. The episode ends with Sky finally playing fetch with Rick. Recognition is one of the weaker episodes of SPD. None of the characters' personalities shine, and the dialogue is too on the nose. Still, I genuinely felt bad for Sky, and the high stakes give this one its edge. It's certainly better than the Ninja Storm body swap episode. Normally, I don't talk about meta stuff in my videos because I like to judge things on their own merits, but here's the real life explanation for the plot hole I brought up earlier. For those of you who don't know, the fight scenes in Power Rangers come from a Japanese series of shows called Super Sentai, with SPD being adapted from Deca Ranger. From what I know, Recognition is pretty much a shot-for-shot remake of the Deca Ranger episode Fake Blue. In Deca Ranger, they deleted criminals instead of turning them into cards, hence why they didn't just do that at the start, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a plot hole for SPD. The whole point of Power Rangers is to make sure the Sentai footage makes sense in a new context. Until next time, stay interesting!